Ravensbrück was created in 1939 as the only major Nazi concentration camp built specifically for women. Just 50 miles north of Berlin, it was designed to hold political prisoners at first. Teachers, nurses, activists, and mothers whose only crime was resisting the regime. Soon the camp expanded. With the outbreak of war, women from all across Europe were sent there. Polish resistance fighters, French and Dutch activists, Soviet prisoners of war, and thousands of Jewish women and children. Over time, more than 130,000 women would be imprisoned in Ravensbrück. The camp was tightly controlled, with barracks, punishment cells, and even training facilities for SS female guards. Many of those guards later became infamous for their brutality in other camps, showing that women were not only victims but also enforcers in the Nazi system. Forced labour was central from the start. Textile factories stood next to the camp where prisoners sewed uniforms for the German military. Later, companies like Siemens exploited the inmates for weapons production. Ravensbrück became both a tool of terror and a business venture. Built for only a few thousand, the camp eventually held more than 40,000 at once. Its origins reveal the Nazi obsession with control, proving that even women were seen as dangerous enough to need their own prison. What began as a small camp grew into a vast system of suffering, setting the stage for horrors still to come. Life in Ravensbrück followed a brutal rhythm designed to crush both body and spirit. At dawn, prisoners were dragged from their bunks for roll call, forced to stand for hours in freezing winds or scorching sun. Any sign of weakness invited beatings from guards or their dogs. After appel, women marched to long shifts of forced labour, building roads, carrying stones, or working in Siemens factories that fueled the Nazi war machine. Rations were pitiful, watery so. Up, a crust of bread, sometimes a smear of margarine. Hunger became a constant companion, gnawing at the mind as much as the body. Disease thrived in the filthy barracks. Typhus, dysentery, and tuberculosis claimed lives daily, while the camp infirmary offered no real care, only selections for death. Punishments were severe, lashings, hours of kneeling on gravel, or public hangings meant to terrify the others. Yet even in such misery, women found ways to resist despair. They shared crumbs of bread, whispered songs from home, and taught secret lessons to children and younger prisoners. Small acts of kindness, hiding a sick comrade during selection, or smuggling news of the outside world, became quiet rebellions. Ravensbrück was built to erase identity, turning names into numbers. But within those barbed wire fences, solidarity often kept hope alive. Survival was never guaranteed, but dignity endured in the courage of women who refused to let the SS steal their humanity. Among the darkest chapters of Ravensbrück were the medical experiments carried out on helpless prisoners. Starting in 1942, young Polish women, many resistance fighters, were chosen as test subjects. The SS called them the rabbits because their bodies were treated like laboratory animals. Doctors sliced open their legs, deliberately infecting wounds with dirt, glass, or bacteria to test new drugs. Some operations were meant to cripple nerves or muscles, leaving women permanently disabled. Many never recovered. Some died in agony, their screams echoing through the barracks. Others faced experiments in sterilization. The Nazis wanted to find quick ways to prevent women from having children. X-rays, surgeries, and chemical injections left many infertile, while others died from infections. These experiments were justified by the SS as science, but in reality they were acts of cruelty disguised as research survivor. This bore scars for life, not only on their bodies but in the trauma they carried long after liberation. And yet, even in this nightmare, the women showed courage. The rabbits supported one another, hiding the weakest from selections, and later testified about what had been done to them. Their bravery ensured the world would one day know the truth of Ravensbrück's crimes. Even in a place built to break the human spirit, women at Ravensbrück found ways to resist. Some resistance was quiet, whispered prayers, sharing crumbs of bread, or teaching children secretly in the barracks. Others risked their lives in bolder acts. Political prisoners smuggled messages, spread forbidden news, and created underground networks of support. They hid sick women during selections, forged work records, and even sabotaged factory production, slowing down the Nazi war machine. Solidarity became a weapon of survival. French, Polish, Dutch, German and Jewish women, though from different backgrounds, formed deep bonds. They shared stories, songs and scraps of food, reminding each other of life beyond the barbed wire. Some acts of courage stood out. When the SS tried to execute the Polish rabbits, who had suffered medical experiments, fellow prisoners shielded them, refusing to betray their hiding places. These moments of unity showed that, even in Ravensbrück, humanity could not be fully destroyed. Resistance did not always mean escape or rebellion. It often meant choosing compassion in a world built on cruelty. That quiet defiance became the camp's most powerful answer to Nazi terror. By 1945, as the Nazi regime collapsed, Ravensbrück descended into chaos. The camp, already overcrowded, swelled with thousands of prisoners evacuated from other camps on brutal death marches. Hunger and disease spread like wildfire. Bodies lay unburied as the SS lost control. In April, orders came to evacuate Ravensbrück itself. Tens of thousands of women were forced onto death marches, driven out on foot with little food or water. Those too weak to walk were shot by the roadside. For many, liberation was only a few miles away, yet they never lived to see it. Inside the camp, thousands still remained. It was then that the Swedish Red Cross, led by Count Folke Bernadotte, negotiated the rescue of hundreds of women. White buses marked with red crosses arrived, carrying survivors to safety in Scandinavia. On April 30, 1945, Soviet troops finally liberated Ravensbrück. What they found was horrifying: starving survivors, piles of corpses, and a camp built for 3,000 that had held more than 40,000 at its peak. For those who survived, freedom came with mixed emotions: relief, but also grief for the countless who had perished in the final desperate weeks. Ravensbrück had fallen, but the scars it left behind would last a lifetime. After liberation, the truth of Ravensbrück slowly emerged. Survivors, many weighing less than 40 kilos, spoke of hunger, forced labor, and the cruel experiments that scarred them for life. Their testimonies revealed the full horror of a camp built for women, where more than 50,000 lives were lost. Justice came in the form of the Ravensbrück trials held in Hamburg between 1946 and 1948. Female guards and SS officials were brought before Allied courts. Some received death sentences, others long prison terms. Yet many escaped justice, blending back into society or hiding behind claims that they were just following orders. For survivors, the trials were only the beginning. They faced the challenge of rebuilding lives shattered by trauma, exile, and loss. Some returned to homelands that no longer existed. Others carried the stigma of being former prisoners. Many never spoke of their suffering until decades later, when silence became too heavy to bear. Still, their voices ensured Ravensbrück would not be forgotten. Each testimony stood as living proof against denial, and as a call for accountability, not only for the crimes of the SS, but for the silence of those who looked away. Today, Ravensbrück stands as both a scar and a warning. The camp's barracks and watchtowers are gone, but the silence around Lake Schwetzey still carries the memory of those who suffered there. A memorial now marks the site, honouring the more than 130,000 women and children who passed through its gates. For decades, Ravensbrück was less known than camps like Auschwitz or Dachau, yet survivors fought tirelessly to ensure its story was told, especially the story of women's suffering, resistance, and resilience. Their voices turned Ravensbrück into a symbol not only of Nazi brutality, but of solidarity and courage in the face of despair. Each testimony, each scar, each name remembered keeps the camp's history alive. Ravensbrück is more than a relic of the past. It is a reminder of what unchecked hatred can do, and why memory is a form of resistance in itself. The women who endured Ravensbrück left behind more than tragedy. They left behind proof that even in the darkest places, humanity can survive. Their legacy is not just the horror of what was done to them, but the strength with which they endured, and the warning they passed on to the generations that followed.